Well, that's the theme song that I wrote for this Funky Friday at 5, I think is what I'm calling it. And I hope we're live. I believe we're live. This is the first time I've done live streams, I've done solo episodes in the first 2 seasons of our podcast. But this is the second time I've been on video. You can see me. The first time, of course, was with Shmriti Shankar, who I'm going to give a shout out to because she was so helpful. And she made that episode such a wonderful episode and such a rich episode. And I'm very happy about that. But I'm going to try to keep this sort of brief. And yet I have a lot I want to talk about. So Funky Fridays at 5. That's the music, the theme. I want to talk about Andrei Tarkovsky's The Sacrifice. But first I want to show you do a little show and tell. This. Thomas Heine is an architecture critic. And he did the etymology of the word funky. Now, of course, we know that funk is related to sort of funky smells or smells that aren't the most pleasant, of course. But he says here, the oldest meaning of funk, and of course there's the music. The oldest meaning of funk, one that I didn't know until I started looking it up, is spark. Isn't that interesting? It's been mostly forgotten, meaning because it's difficult. He goes on. It's a really interesting book about the 70s, but he talks about a spark in spirit. And I thought, that's really good. So I wasn't quite sure how to proceed. What I wanted to say about Tarkovsky is I want to tell a personal story about my discovery of this film. Now, I discovered this film when it came out, so I would have been 20 years old. I think it would have been 1987 or 1986, possibly. And I had a friend whose name is Greg Tosian, and he was at that time, and now I had friends that were in different generations. So he was the top film critic in Tampa, Florida at the Tampa Tribune. And he's, and I had been hanging out with this guy. And he was an adult, and I was hanging out with him when I was a young teen, like 12, 13. And we talk about movies, And he said, Mitch, you got to check out this filmmaker, Andrei Tarkovsky. And he began talking about Andrei Rublev and Mirror and all these films. And so I have to give credit to him. I think he's the one that really basically changed my life, because I have this. Now, where is it? This is the first edition of his Sculpting in Time, see? And guess what? I've carried this around since 87. So I'm 53 now. I was 20, and I remember going to buy this little book in Boston. This is right around the time I moved to Boston, very early. First moved to Boston from Florida, and I went into a place called Rizzoli Bookstore. Anybody remember Rizzoli Bookstore books? Old bookstore. And I saw this, and I had to get it. And I've maintained all these years this. In the film, now this is interesting. In cinema history, right? There's great openings in movies, okay? And The Sacrifice, which is his last film, in 87, has one of the great openings in cinema history. Now, when I think of great openings, I think of Robert Altman's The Player, because in the opening of the player, the characters in the film walking on the lot talk about great openings of films, like Touch of Evil, as mentioned, Orson Welles. And basically long takes or one take. So no editing, no cutting. And, of course, I think of Touch of Evil, of course, as that film makes a joke about it. And, of course, that film has one long take with Fred Ward, and if you remember the Robert Altman film. That was 90s, but there's also Dazed and Confused, of course, also in the 90s, which is a montage to Aerosmith's Sweet Emotion. And then, of course, there's another personal favorite, The Long Goodbye, also by Altman, which is Elliot Gould sitting in his bed thinking about cat food or trying to waking up and get food for his cat. And there's The Sacrifice. Now, The Sacrifice, the credit sequence is partially Leonardo's The Adoration of Magi, which is from 1481, and it's an unfinished painting by Da Vinci. And the camera goes really inside the painting, or right on the surface of the painting, so much so that the audience isn't really sure what painting you're looking at, or, this isn't very interesting because Tarkovsky loves to show paintings in his films, and he likes to focus on things. And boom, the painting, the camera's scanning the painting, and then you see the most perfect landscape you'll ever see in a film. A man, his little boy in a tree, as I just showed you the picture there. And it's 10 minutes, so it's 3 minutes and something seconds to 13 minutes, and then there's a cut, but there's no cut. It's just basically this perfect landscape of this man telling a story. Now, it's Erland Josephson, who was Bergman's favorite actor. Was a little boy, and he basically says, in life, it's really good to have a ritual that you do every day. And the first example he uses is, of course, a monk, right? A monk watering a barren tree, a Japanese tea. And of course, you're seeing him with his little boy watering this tree as he's talking about it. And he says this tree's barren, and he waters it every day, every day, every day. And eventually, he gets up one morning, and the tree is filled with blossoms. It's not a barren tree. It's a lively tree. And the character goes even further. The character talks about pouring water into a toilet. That if you did that every day, he says the world would change the world, which is a very idealistic and very it's very much Tarkovsky, because Tarkovsky, among many other things, was a Christian, and he was also very mystical. And he puts these ideas in the film, and I sort of feel like our podcast that Laurie Strickland produces needs the same kind of ritualistic attention every day, like watering a tree. And it isn't so much thinking about the blossoms. Is it going to blossom? Is it not going to blossom? It's about sort of, I've written about this before, how I love the quotidian. And so quotidian things that you take care of every day, you water them like you water a tree, like the monk does, or you pour water into a basin or whatever, these very homely things that accumulation over time, you'll get a tree that blossoms. And I feel that's what we're trying to do here. And that's why I am interested in having subscribers to our channel. We're sort of new with this video stuff. And I just wanted to mention that. And so I thought that would really be nice to talk about that moment in the film. Now, the film The Sacrifice is about the end of the world, a nuclear war, and there's he prays and he sleeps with a witch. I mean, it's really, I don't want to, if you haven't seen it, I don't want to get, but it's really a film for now. It was made in the 80s, and interestingly enough, in the 80s, people were obsessed with nuclear power. I mean, not the power, but the bomb. And there were all these movies like The Day After and The Threat of Nuclear Annihilation. And that, of course, was on Tarkovsky's mind when he made this film. But we've had quite a year in 2020, right? And so I feel like this film could be watched tomorrow, the day after, pun maybe intended, and I feel that it's a film for now as it was in '87. The first time I saw it, when Greg showed it to me, we went into a basement, and he had this little moviola. Because he was a movie critic, he would like look at these little moviolas. We watched Paris, Texas with Harry Dean Stanton, and we watched Sacrifice, and I was totally blown away. And I would go on and bother my friends, you got to check out this this filmmaker. And of course, I didn't want to see everything he did. And so I saw basically all his films, some many times, more than once. And so my feeling about it is, you know, just like with the piano, you practice your scales. You know, if you're an athletic person, you exercise, I believe. I'm to understand that that's what athletic people do. And you get results. So I think it's the same thing with our podcast. So I would like to invite everybody to also reflect on this fact. Our podcast is unique. There's a lot of podcasts out there. But here's the thing. Our podcast is interested in a maximum amount of stylistic diversity. We want to have famous people on our show, and we want to have totally unknown people, the rich, the poor, every art medium, commercial, non-commercial, avant-garde. Not only do we have folks like that on our show, the same show, but I let the people that make stuff talk about their experience and from their point of view. I don't try to throw a lot of crap at them if I can help it. And I'm also, if I may say so, a little bit knowledgeable. I try to know something about the guest, and I try to, you know. So I think I'm unique in the fabric, or in the spectrum of podcasts. Is my podcast aims about the arts, which is consciousness, right? Making things in consciousness. And I don't have an axe to grind. I don't have an agenda other than the agenda of the arts, and other than the agenda of freedom, free artistic creation, and that the people that come on our show feel respected, and that they feel loved, and that we represent that. So I see here I'm getting messages. This is the nature, right, of a live stream. I think you get messages. So I just aim to keep this brief, and I would like people to subscribe. You can subscribe on Patreon, and you can, some plans that are upcoming. I plan to have, well, there's a lot of surprises coming up. I'm very excited, if I may speak too early, about Ellen Burstyn coming on the show. She's a guest that's upcoming. I have a Latin American percussionist, one of the leading Latin American percussionists. And there's probably a bunch of people that I can't think of coming on. I don't know who they are, but they're different people. So thank you, and think about subscribing. And this is going to be a regular thing. I don't know if it's going to be every Friday, but it's going to be many Fridays throughout the month. And I look forward to it. So thank you.